48 hours ago, Chinese Coast Guard ships injured 3 Filipino fishermen with water cannons. 2 boats destroyed. But here's what nobody's connecting for you about what's really happening. $5.3 trillion in global trade flows through this sea every single year. That's more money than the entire GDP of Japan. And right now, one country is building artificial islands, installing missile systems, and preparing to control it all. The world's biggest economies are watching, and they're arming up fast. This is the story mainstream media won't connect for you. Before you scroll past, answer this. Do you own a smartphone? Buy anything online? Or clothes made overseas? Then you're personally affected by what's happening right now in the South China Sea. Because 30 to 40% of all global maritime trade, the stuff that makes modern life possible, passes through these contested waters. And here's the kicker. 80% of China's own energy imports come through here too. So why would Beijing risk triggering a global crisis over it? Now, if you watch my video on Chinese port automation, you know China operates 60 automated terminals as of late 2025, more than the rest of the world combined. Their throughput efficiency is 2 to 3 times higher than American ports. But here's what I didn't fully explain in that video. Speed isn't the only game. Control is. Map animation showing Chinese-controlled ports across Asia-Pacific. China now operates or controls ports in over 100 countries through Belt and Road. From Pakistan to Greece to Peru. They've built a global shipping surveillance network that tracks every container in real time. But there's a critical choke point in their strategy. This sea, and if they lose access to it, the entire system collapses. That's why they're willing to escalate. December 13th, 2025. Filipino fishing boats near Sabina Shoal. Water cannons. 3 fishermen injured. 2 vessels significantly damaged. But this wasn't isolated. It was one of over 200 documented incidents this year alone. And those are just the ones that made the news. Water cannon attacks, ramming maneuvers, laser targeting of pilots, blocking humanitarian supply missions. China's Coast Guard, which operates around 250 large vessels, outnumbering the U.S. Navy's 296 ships, has been systematically pushing out Filipino, Vietnamese, and Malaysian fishermen from waters they've fished for generations. So what are America's allies doing about it? They're preparing for the long game. Japan just approved defense spending of $70 billion, hitting 2% of GDP for the first time since World War II. They're deploying long-range missiles that can reach China's coastline from Japanese territory. The Philippines and Japan signed a historic reciprocal access agreement in September 2025, allowing Japanese troops to deploy on Philippine soil for the first time since World War II. Think about how monumental that is. Australia committed over $32 billion over the next 4 years for naval expansion and AUKUS submarine preparation. South Korea is building a blue water navy capable of projecting power far beyond the Korean peninsula. This isn't just defense spending. This is strategic encirclement. But here's what defense planners know that you don't. Every single one of these allies has the same Achilles heel. Their economies run on energy and goods shipped through, you guessed it, the South China Sea. Japan, about 80% of energy imports through here. South Korea, 85 to 90% of trade volume through here. Philippines, their entire Western economic zone depends on it. If China closes this sea, and they're methodically building the capability to do exactly that, these economies don't just slow down. They freeze. No oil, no semiconductors, no supply chains. That's the leverage China is constructing. Remember those 60 automated Chinese terminals I mentioned? Here's the strategic reality. They're not just efficient. They're networked. China can track every container, monitor every ship route, analyze every supply chain in real time through their Belt and Road port network spanning over 100 countries. from your Amazon package to military equipment heading anywhere in the Indo-Pacific. And when those ships need to pass through the South China Sea, Beijing has eyes on what's inside them, where they're going, and the ability to create administrative delays. That's not just economic influence. That's systematic control of global commerce infrastructure. So America's allies aren't just buying weapons. They're building strategic alternatives. Japan and India are developing Arctic shipping routes to bypass the South China Sea entirely. The Philippines is upgrading domestic ports to reduce dependency on Chinese-operated facilities. That AUKUS is building the most advanced conventionally powered submarine fleet in modern history, up to 12 boats with rotational deployments starting in 2027. And here's the billion-dollar question that shapes 2026 and beyond. Will these alternatives arrive in time? Because here's what the data shows. China has already established infrastructure dominance. 60 automated terminals versus a handful in the U.S. Port operations in over 100 countries worldwide. The world's largest coast guard by vessel count. The world's largest navy by total hulls. Over 3,200 acres of artificial islands built since 2013. And most critically, the time advantage. Every year that passes, China builds more island infrastructure, deploys more surveillance systems, extends missile coverage. By 2030, some analysts project China could have effective leverage over 80% of South China Sea traffic, not through military blockade, through infrastructure control. But there's one factor Beijing didn't fully account for. They're geographically surrounded. Japan to the north, the Philippines to the east, Vietnam to the west, Taiwan at the center. And every single one is upgrading offensive capabilities right now. China has the world's largest navy, but it operates in what strategists call a bathtub. Those islands they built, they're force multipliers in peacetime. But in conflict, they're stationary targets. Unsinkable, yes, but also unable to maneuver. If escalation occurs, those fortified islands become isolated outposts under converging Allied fire. And that brings us back to those fishermen from the beginning. They're not military assets. They're civilians caught in the grinding gears of great power competition. 3 guys with nets facing down the second most powerful military on Earth. Because if they stop fishing, if they abandon those traditional grounds, China's territorial claims get stronger by default through unchallenged presence. These aren't soldiers. They're fathers, breadwinners. And they've become unwilling pawns in a contest that could reshape the global order. So where does this go? Scenario 1, diplomatic breakthrough. ASEAN and China agree on binding resource sharing. Probability, based on current stalemate, less than 5%. Scenario 2, frozen conflict. Constant skirmishes. Incremental escalations. No resolution. This is where we're heading into 2026. According to most defense analysts from SIZE and the Stimson Center. Scenario 3, major military incident. 1 miscalculation. 1 water cannon hitting a vessel carrying international observers. And suddenly, $5.3 trillion in annual trade routes become contested war zones. Your smartphone gets delayed 6 months. Automotive supply chains collapse. Energy prices spike 40%. And that's just the economic cascade. This is exactly why infrastructure geopolitics matters. Those 60 automated Chinese ports I covered, they're not just engineering marvels. They're nodes in an economic warfare network. And the South China Sea? It's the critical junction where infrastructure meets military strategy. If you want to understand how China built this integrated system, the actual engineering, the investment strategy, the technological edge, check out my deep dive on Chinese port automation. The numbers will surprise you, but the strategic implications? That's what changes how you see global trade. Link in the description and card above. Here's what's coming next on this channel. How Taiwan's ship foundries are the actual reason China hasn't moved militarily yet, and why America is investing $52 billion through the CHIPS Act to break that dependency. But here's the reality. YouTube's algorithm only shows these videos to subscribers consistently. And this channel works because you're here for the strategic depth, not the headlines. So if you stayed with me this far, and statistically, most viewers already left, hit subscribe. This is where geopolitics, infrastructure, and economics intersect. Most channels cover one. We connect all three. The South China Sea Flashpoint isn't a future scenario. It's unfolding right now in 2025, and it's accelerating into 2026. The question isn't if major powers will collide over these waters. It's when, and whether the infrastructure alternatives get built fast enough to prevent it. Thanks for watching. Now go check out that port automation video. It'll reframe everything I just explained.